Former U.S. President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty to charges of conspiring to overturn his defeat in the 2020 election. It's the third set of criminal charges he is facing, and they are seen as the most serious. It's not clear whether the case could derail his efforts to return to the White House in next year's election.
Trump Force One rolls into Washington, delivering the former president for what is becoming a familiar sight in America, a court appearance by Donald J. Trump. Before heading for the motorcade, there was time for a brief pause for the cameras. Outside the courthouse, Trump's fiercest critics came head-to-head with his loyal supporters in a visible demonstration of a divided country.
I'm here to celebrate because by the end of the day today, Trump's going to get another 5 points in the polls, and it's very exciting. Every time they do one of these indictments, Trump goes up in the polls.
I think that Trump poses a threat to our democracy and his supporters. I think that he should be held accountable for the crimes that he committed while he was president. And I think this is long overdue.
Inside the courthouse, in an appearance lasting just a few minutes, the former president entered a plea of not guilty. Arriving back at the airport, a typically bellicose Trump took the opportunity to once again call the proceedings a political witch hunt.
When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary.
As Trump left Washington, the day's drama concluded, for now. But with a trial date likely to be sometime next year, and Trump still the front runner for the Republican nomination, 2024 could see Trump fighting for the White House and his freedom.
I asked DW's William Glucroft whether Republican voters share Trump's view that he's the victim of political persecution.
Well, of course, there is serious substance to the evidence, which many legal scholars have said these are serious cases, not just this one about the January 6th and the efforts to overturn the 2020 election, but also the two other cases against him. Of course, we heard that great soundbite. I thought that was a very accurate soundbite we just heard in the report from, I suppose, one of Trump's supporters saying every time that Trump faces these charges or he's in the news like this, his poll numbers go up. I mean, we've seen that Donald Trump is really an expert at the idea of all news is good news and turning what would be bad news into good news for him. He's even been using these charges, using these legal problems for him as a tool to raise money. He's been sending out emails. His campaign has been sending out fundraising emails, for example, talking about this witch hunt and, really, appealing to his hardcore supporters to support him. And that's exactly what we've been seeing in the polls. And as we know that regardless of what his legal troubles may be, there's nothing legally stopping him from running and winning the presidency in 2024.
So what happens next, William? Where does this case go from here?
Well, that's where things get very murky. Basically, this was the arraignment, and then we have a pre-trial date, which should happen at the end of August. And that's when the prosecution and the defense are really going to have at it over what on the surface are very boring procedural details, but actually can have major impacts on the outcome of this case, because the defense has many opportunities and many ways that it can delay this trial. And that seems to be, or that's shaping up to be their number one strategy here, which is that they can just delay this trial or maybe even get it thrown out. And this goes for the other charges, the other trials that he's facing as well. They could throw this into or beyond the 2024 election. If Donald Trump wins or an ally of his wins, of course, at least the federal level, these cases can all be thrown out. These cases can all be ended because then it's his Justice Department that would then take over these cases and he can have them stopped. So that seems to be the big thing right now. we don't know. That's what this sort of negotiating happens now between prosecution and defense. When will the trial date be set? Jury selection. Even where will the case be? Will the case be tried? All these things are still open to discussion and negotiation in the court.
This story is getting massive attention in the U.S. and abroad. Tell us more, William, about how this is playing out in the media.
Right. Of course, this is the top story, of course, in the U.S. and around the world. It's also, of course, top headlines because this is unprecedented in the United States. Of course, the interesting thing is that this is not unusual in many countries around the world where their leaders are accused of corruption and tried either while in office or after they're in office. So this really is unique that it's unique that this is happening in an unprecedented way in the United States, where in many other countries it's just kind of par for the course. Nonetheless, it is happening in the United States, which is a major democracy, of course. And if you're looking at how things are kind of playing out in the media, you're seeing, everything from looking at the charges to more of Trump's or allied media or conservative media, like in Fox News, for example. They're much more focused on the social media circus. They're nitpicking apart small aspects that look unfair or critical to Donald Trump and, focusing more on the Trump side of things, what Trump is saying, rather than looking at what the prosecution is saying. So it's not about what's true and what's not true. It's more about picking the facts that you want to focus on and framing stories around that, depending on your audience and the story they want to get out.
William, thank you very much. That was DW's William Glucroft.